Violence and chaos in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng has revealed the effects of our unequal society. That's the view of Ms. Ela Gandhi, Chairperson of the Gandhi Development Trust. She wrote an opinion piece at the weekend reflecting on her childhood in Phoenix, one of the hotspots of the recent violence. Ela joins me now here on the Midday View on eNCA. Ms. Gandhi, good afternoon. Welcome to the Midday View. Reading through your opinion piece, I mean, you having grown up, you were a little girl in the 1949 violence between the local African population and the Indian community, and also through the 80s, you witnessed that next chapter of violence. And today in 2021, yet again, it must be heartbreaking for you.
Yes, it is, but there are differences as well as some similarities in each one of them. As I had said, the similarity is that the people at the grassroots level lived together in peace and harmony for many, many years. And the riots in each instance were instigated by others, as yet unknown figures, who instigated these riots in 1949, again in 1985, and again now in 2021. And in each instance, they have used different sort of, vulnerabilities of the people in order to to have these riots. If you look at the trajectory of the 1949 riots, in many instances they were in areas where people lived together, but both communities were not wealthy communities. And you find that where the wealthy lived, there wasn't that much of rioting. In both instances, in 1949, in 1985, it was only the Inanda community where Indians and Africans lived together for many years. I myself grew up in that area, and suddenly in 1985, all the Indians were asked to leave the place, and their homes were burnt down. Many of those families are now living in Phoenix Township. So these are scars from our history that people have lived with. But what we must also remember is that in 1949, there were leaders like Chief Albert Luthuli and Dr. Monty Naika, who came together and went around and visited all the communities to bring about peace.
Is that the same approach you think we need today? I was planning earlier to interview the secretary of the ANC as a provincial governing party, Mr. Mdumseni Ntuli, but in the last hour, unfortunately, he had to go to an urgent meeting. Is that the same approach that you are mentioning from 1949, that Chief Albert Luthuli and Mr. Naika, Monty Naika, adopted? Is that the same approach you think that should be done today by the leaders of today?
Well, I think there are several things that need to be done today, because the instigators didn't start on a racial note. On the day that the unrest began, this time around, it was just shops and chain shops, malls, and so on that were targeted, not a particular race group. So you find that in many areas, the shops were looted, including the center of town, center of the city, and so on. So it wasn't at all on a racial basis. And when the neighborhood watches were set up, they were set up in all the areas, including the center of town, where communities of all races lived together and the neighborhood watch is comprised of people of all races. But now the whole situation has been turned around to look to raise racial issues. And we see in the social media, very scary.
Yes. And the president has spoken about how social media is being used to turn one race against another. But also he's mentioned in his newsletter today, in his weekly newsletter today, from the desk of the president, that there were cases where there was racial discrimination, where there were these illegal roadblocks, because only the police, only the law enforcement accredited police are allowed to do a roadblock in the country. And people were racially profiled, in some cases pulled out of their vehicles and beaten up and degraded, and several of them killed. The president talks about that in his newsletter today. So we had that tragic turn of events, and the wounds are so deep. How can that Phoenix community with the neighboring communities that have been affected really recover from this and build and find themselves and build reconciliation and heal from this? Very briefly, ma'am, what are your thoughts?
Well, when we look at that, there are criminal elements also involved. And it has been found. I think the police need to, report on exactly what has happened in those instances. But roadblocks, even in the center of city, in all the areas, and it wasn't just Indian community, but all the different race groups. I personally witnessed roadblocks where there were, people of all races standing at street corners, blocking the streets, trying to protect the people. And largely this is because the police and the army failed to protect the people, the safety of the people. So, people of all races have gotten together. It would be false to say that only the Indians got together and put up these roadblocks.
But currently we have a situation where there are those racial tensions. The president is appealing for people to work together. And I know you are also, you've got a link with the Phoenix Community Trust. I just want to ask you one last question. There's a peace forum that's been established under the police, as we understand, with representatives from the various communities, including people from Bambai, Zwelicha, and Amawoti, plus Phoenix. Very, very briefly, ma'am, as we conclude, do you think this peace forum has a chance to really get the people across those various communities to find each other and establish peace, finally?
Yes, absolutely. There's a willingness, and all races, the Bambai community as well as the Phoenix community, want peace, and we have a number of different interfaith groups that have come together. And these meetings are being held at the Phoenix settlement, which is between Bambai and Phoenix Township. So all the race groups are coming together, and we are working on projects and programs in order to bring the two race groups together and in order to build a common nationhood amongst the communities. To look at the problems and understand each other as to what people have suffered, because both communities have suffered. And Phoenix Township is not comprised of the wealthy people. It's largely a large number of people in the Phoenix Township are poor people, poor Indian community, but in many cases, they are living together with African people who have bought houses in Phoenix and living as neighbors in harmony over the past many years. And suddenly this has happened. So, it has brought in fear, anxiety, and anger where, they have gone beyond, compassion and so on, have done things extremely harsh, where people have been beaten up and killed. And that isn't something that anyone, would condone. Even the Phoenix community itself has said that the police and the justice system must bring these people to book.
Okay.
So everyone agrees on that.
Thank you very much. We wish you well. I know you are involved as a community leader in your own way in supporting the efforts to bring the two communities together. It's good to hear that there's an interfaith service that's taking place at a community center involving people from all the communities there, particularly the Indian community and the African communities in and around Phoenix. That was Ela Gandhi, Chairperson of the Gandhi Development Trust.